Por tiempos, lo que vamos a hacer es que vamos a enfocarnos en lo que es ad blocking y lo que es la publicidad nativa, pero definitivamente estamos abiertos a contestar cualquier pregunta que tengan de lo que es la venta programática. Cualquier persona acá en el panel puede contestar, o si no, nos vemos después de la reunión. Presentando primero, tenemos aquí a Laura, y Laura, se lo voy a decir en inglés, is the manager at Brand Forge. She focuses on the production and creation of content, native advertising, and the distribution of around different platforms, the different distribution platforms. So today she's going to speak to us about native advertising, and specifically how media companies, you could work with them to increase sales and use native formats to also engage audiences.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Let me see if this is all ready to go here, and we will get started. I'm waiting, I think, for them, because I see my presentation here. There we are. Okay, perfect. Hola, buenas tardes. Primero que todo, gracias a SIP por darme la oportunidad de estar presente en este panel. Y también gracias a ustedes. Son las 5 de la tarde y todavía están aquí, listos para seguir aprendiendo y seguir escuchando. Voy a hacer mi presentación en inglés para hacerlo lo más corto posible y para que pues tengamos tiempo también para preguntas. So I work for Deseret Digital Media, and as you guys were told a minute ago, I work more specifically with Brand Forge, and we do native advertising and also do curated content. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what all of this is, perhaps in a little bit of a different way than you've heard. So first of all, let's talk about how the digital business model still looks a lot like the legacy print business model, you know, where we were able to see about 50% content and 50% advertising, but only it's a little smaller now, right? You have to fit things from a newspaper to now a computer. So you see now how we have about 75% content and only 25% advertising. So our advertising keeps getting smaller, but then things are getting more complicated because, I don't know if you are familiar with this, but this is an ad blocker, and we have about 40+ million users, me being one of them. You probably already hate me now that I say that, but I'm a proud user of an ad blocker for many reasons, and perhaps because I work with native advertising. And the problem is even bigger than you think, so let's watch this video. And it's supposed to have sound.
Mia Bella, come to me, for my heart is longing for you. Mia Bella, say you will, for it's you that I adore. Every star that's up above says we two should be in love.
Now that's a problem that we're not going to discuss, right? The problem is that all of us are on a mobile nowadays, and so that also decreases our chances for advertising. And so now it's about 90% content and 10% advertising. And how do you monetize that, right? How do you make money in this business? And at these times where people seem to be on their mobile and all they do is use their laptop or their desktop simply to work. Think about yourself, right? You go home, and do you pull the laptop out to go on Facebook? You don't. You do that on your mobile. So to consume content and to consume stories, the majority of us do it on mobile, yet for some reason, us publishers seem to forget that fact, right? That as consumers, we are on mobile all the time, which makes it challenging to monetize and continue to advertise. So what do we do to solve the problem? Before I tell you that, let me give you a little bit of a background, because I'm going to talk about native advertising in a little bit of a different context. Brand Forge lives in the Story Lab, Deseret Digital Media's Story Lab. And in the Story Lab, we have the Video Lab, we have Brand Forge, and then we also have our contributor network that it's all managed there. And this is a jam session, or what we call a jam session, and this actually happens every day, anywhere between 10:30 and 10:45. And what we do is build native advertising campaigns for both our internal and external partners. And we jam for about 15 minutes, sometimes half an hour, right? And come up with different ideas. And though, yes, perhaps one person could come up with 10 headlines for a native advertising campaign, this kind of collaboration is what makes us think, okay, so how is this going to look on mobile? So what kind of story do we want to tell? What's the audience? What kind of emotion do we want to evoke with this particular article, and so on and so on. So keep that in mind, that this is where I live and breathe all day, in the Story Lab, in the creativity. So though we are thinking about monetizing, we're also thinking audience and many different factors. So stay with me. Back again now to how do we solve this problem? I have 3 things for you. 1, tell stories. 2, focus on the audience. And 3, think mobile. Let's break them down. So tell stories. John Didion famously said, we tell ourselves stories in order to live. And isn't that the truth? Think about it. All day long, we're telling stories to our children, to our spouses, to our significant others, even on Facebook and on social media. You have to realize that we actually are storytellers, and that's who we innately are. Now, from 20,000-year-old cave paintings to the bedtime stories we hear as children and hope to one day tell our own kids, storytelling is a part of the human fabric. We live and breathe stories all day, every day. So approach native advertising as you would storytelling. But first, let's get the concept straight of what native advertising actually is. And Jay Rosen, a well-renowned professor at NYU, tells us it is this. So proper definition of native advertising that is as worth reading as the editorial into which it is mixed, from which it is distinguished. It sounds a little bit like, okay, what are we trying to say here? But essentially is, native advertising are articles that are just as good as quality content as any editorial piece that a journalist could or would create for your publication. But then this native advertising article is also mixed with the editorial so seamlessly that the audience doesn't even know that they are reading a piece of advertising, yet it is clearly marked as sponsored content. And it sounds complicated, but it's somewhat simple, and it works out so beautifully. Let's move on to say what is not. It is not a press release. We've been asked several times, and it is not a press release. That's not native advertising. It is not an advertorial. That's different. And it's also not pitchy. Native advertising articles are not meant to tell how incredibly wonderful this particular advertiser or brand is. That's not what it is about. So, at Deseret Digital Media, we abide to these 5 principles. And they are quality content, first and foremost. Again, mixed with editorial. It matches the form of our editorial articles. It also matches the form of how the articles live on the website, on the homepage, and the rest of the pages. It is clearly labeled, of course, and the FCC tells us we have to do that. Sponsored articles need to be labeled. And then the last thing is it behaves like editorial. So let me illustrate this for you. KSL.com, it's one of our websites, one of our properties. And as you can see, this is our homepage. And you can see all of the articles and all of their stories. These are all editorial content. So here we scroll to the bottom of the page. All the articles appear and go down as, new stories come up every day. So here we have a sponsored article that comes up on the queue on the homepage. And as you can clearly see, the picture is the same as the other photos. There's nothing different. There's no coloring around it that says this is something else or that it's advertising. It doesn't live on the right rail. It lives right there mixed with the editorial. The headline is the same, so it looks the same as an editorial article. It is a piece of content that you would actually probably love to consume. 5 tips for moms who aren't getting enough sleep. I mean, can we relate to that? Right? Absolutely. Yeah, I'm not a mom, but yes, even I, not being a mom, can get more sleep, so I would probably click on this. But then you see the beauty there that it says sponsored. And that's all that we do right there. And it moves down the queue just like our other articles move. There's nothing different about it. It is native to the page. So I say encourage your clients to tell a quality story because, again, we're in the business of telling stories. We are storytellers, and those are the things that we want to share. So let me show you a quality story that it's also sponsored content. This is a native advertising article that was sponsored by FIFA 15 and done by Vox Nation. And I mean, first of all, soccer fans would love to consume this. But it's beautiful because, one, it's sponsored by FIFA, but we never mentioned FIFA in the article. However, FIFA is inserted in the article in such an organic way. You can't really tell that, this is advertising. It's not FIFA all over. And then also you see the player right here. They give you, whatever description on the side, but then also this is the statistics about the player. And that matches pretty much what the game looks like. I mean, this is just, to me, fabulous. Now, the number 2 thing that I said is focus on the audience, and this is the scary reason why. So if you look at where it says today, that's where we are today, in terms of the gray bar being the content consumption and the yellow bar being the content that it's being created. So right now we have plenty of people reading our articles. Now by the year 2020, we will have a whole bunch of articles and not enough people to consume all that content. So if you're already feeling overwhelmed and thinking we have so much content on the internet, you wait until the year 2020. It's gonna get worse. So that means you have to capture your audience right now. Make sure that you keep your audience engaged on your page and on your social media. And by doing that, you will perhaps, try and avoid in the future having that audience merge to another site because all that you do is serve them ads all day long. And you forget that they are people seeking stories and seeking quality content. So focus on the audience and think about the audience when you're creating really any content, but especially native advertising. Now, we, at the very beginning, did not think about our audience, of course, right? We made mistakes. And so here are 2 different articles where one is essentially an advertorial and the other one too is essentially a press release, right? We didn't follow our own advice. And the first one, 6 reasons to spend all of one's days at Daybreak, Daybreak being a community in Salt Lake City where, it's beautiful, it has a lake and whatnot. So we started to talk all about Daybreak. It was all about Daybreak. Well, that became a place where people with Daybreak that were angry were leaving angry comments. So the advertiser called us and said, can you turn the comments off? Because it's actually a horrible thing that's happening for us. So we hurt our client and we hurt ourselves, and of course, the audience didn't like it. Now the second piece, Utah National Model and Blueprint for the Future, is like, you want to fall asleep. Do you want to share that story? Do you want to read that story? Of course not. You don't. Now, when we actually got our audience into our minds and created native advertising articles that, are engaging and that are entertaining and informative, then we really got our audience attention. And it's not just me telling you that, because if you read at the bottom of those 2 articles, you can see the number of page views, of uniques, the average time spent with the article, and then the links and the clicks back to our advertiser. And numbers don't lie. Right? I can get up here and get all cute and tell you about stories and how awesome that is, but then the numbers tell us that this is actually working, and it's working really well, not only for us as a way of monetizing, but also for the advertisers. Now, obviously, it's not just articles. It could also be video, it could be infographics, it could be memes. Native advertising can happen on all sorts of different mediums and all sorts of different ways because, again, we're telling stories. So look at this video. Now I made you all hungry and you want to leave. Don't leave yet. So imagine if you wake up on a Saturday and a Sunday morning and this is on your Facebook feed. I would watch this. Not only that, imagine if it inspires you to wake up and make your husband or your significant other a wonderful breakfast. And then on top of that, maybe you share it, right? Because, oh my goodness, such a delicious waffle. Let me share that story with my entire Facebook feed. And then on top of that, maybe you snap a photo of your husband being totally messy eating this waffle and you post it on Instagram. Do you think that the person or the advertiser who sponsored this video would be happy? Yeah, very, very happy. But again, think about the audience, think about them, think about telling a story, something entertaining, something that they can share, stories that they can share. And think also how to improve their lives. So our native, as I said a little bit earlier, and as you could see on the other slide, performs quite well. Top performing content on site, about 23% higher page views than editorial. Average time spent engaging with content about over 2 minutes. A lot of social shares, better click-through rate, and then in-story text link performance 10 times better than editorial, because if we can organically mention the advertiser in the article, we will, without making the article about the advertiser, and that is the beauty of native advertising. My third one is think mobile. And I'm not going to go too much into detail about this because, I mean, we've been like seeing this all day. Everybody keeps saying mobile, 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 right? And this is the reason. I mean, look, it's right here next to me and I have my computer, but it does not leave my sight. And then we saw in the video earlier, I mean, this is probably the last thing that you look at. Not your spouse, not your children, your mobile. And it's the first thing that you look at when you wake up in the morning. It's actually probably closest to you on the nightstand than your own spouse, right? We take it to the bathroom. We take it everywhere with us. And so think about mobile, 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 mobile. How am I going to tell this story and how is it going to fit on a mobile phone? What is it going to look like? Do I need to make it shorter, longer? If I do a video, am I going to have to make my audience and my viewers do this? Because they're not doing it anymore, right? So think about all of those things when you are also creating these stories and this content. And then, as you continue to think mobile, not only think about the device, but think about location, right? If you want these people to consume the content on the bus, then perhaps, it could be a longer story because it's for the commute. If you want people to consume it on the go when they're on a walk, then maybe it's a 500 or 300 word article. Or maybe it doesn't even need to be an article. It fits very well in a 30-second video. Or maybe it's just an infographic that explains really well the whatever message we're trying to convey. So get creative, think about mobile, not only the device, but also the location. And here's a good example of a fantastic ad that we did for Xfinity Comcast. 10 ways you may be killing your home Wi-Fi signal. Who has experienced that? Nobody has? I'm the only one? Really? No way. Yeah. So you read this article, of course you want to read it because you want to solve that problem because it's happened to you, right? Not only that, but you also want to share it with your entire Facebook community because you want to be the person that solves that problem for your other people, right? You scroll down. You see all the different ways, you see a photo, and you see a photo because if you read the title and you look at the picture, maybe you don't read the article, and we're totally okay with that, right? It's not clickbait, we give you the information, and you consume it as you like. You read the titles or the subtitles, and you see the photo, and you got the idea, or you go deeper into it. So, again, think in mobile. So are you gonna be a part of it? It's my question to you. Are you going to engage in this native advertising thing? And here's a little bit about the kind of revenue that it's predicted by the year 2020. We see social, we see sponsorship, we see native style display. In native style, display seems to be almost doubling every year. So, things to remember again. Tell stories with your native advertising campaigns. Focus on the audience, create entertaining, educating, and enlightening content. And then go to where your audience is, right? On mobile, phones, and on the go. Thank you.
¿Preguntas? Guido?
Question. You mentioned transport
Tiene que ir el micrófono.
you mentioned two brands, Brandford and Storylab. What's the difference? What is the same? You said we sit down from 10:30 to 11 a.m. to discuss strategy.
Yes.
You discuss only advertising strategies, or you're going to pitch with a native ad campaign, or you also discuss leadership strategies with specific themes that are good for advertising. What's the agenda of that Story Lab laboratory?
I would say all of the above and then some, right? So we get into this, okay? We really do. And then people, come up with different questions. But to go back, Deseret Digital Media, it's the company. The Story Lab is where Brandforge lives. It lives within the Story Lab, right? So I am a part of the Story Lab. I am a part of that group of people that you saw in the picture earlier that it's, jamming every day at 10:30. So we jam about native advertising campaigns for our external brands and also for our internal brands. And then we talk about, this. So I say, okay, I have a client, it's a hospital, and they want to target moms that just barely delivered kids. So they're new moms, and they're between the ages of 25 and 35 years old. And that's their target audience. So what kind of articles can we create for this particular audience. And are we going to do articles, or are we going to do a video, right? Because now their objective is to target these moms so that they can potentially be a leader in the community, so that when they have the second child, they come back to that same hospital. Does that make sense? Is this making sense? I mean, it just goes on and on and on and on. And then, you know, is it a video? Is it an article? Is it an infographic? What will convey the message best? Is it a mixture of them all? Yes.
That means you are migrating money from display advertising to native advertising. Is that the end game of your strategy?
It's a good question. We're not migrating because the display advertising is going away. So we're not forcing the migration. It's disappearing. So we're creating an entirely new category of advertising. It's a new product that we're offering the market, and it's a premium product. So what people pay for with native advertising is the privilege of being listed on your homepage or the page that you designate in a fashion that really rents your credibility. That you've built up your brand for so many years as a brand that's trustworthy, that warrants the attention of the public and warrants the trust of the public. And so native advertising is a new advertising format that plays as well on desktop as it does on mobile. The reason why we created the Story Lab, and Laura is part of the great energy that happens there, is we realized a year ago that we needed to get better and get more innovative at storytelling in general. Native advertising being one aspect of storytelling. And we needed to get better at editorial storytelling with infographics and design and video and motion graphics and memes and photo quotes. Now, all of the different fashions in which millennials, Generation Z, and everyone else is engaging on mobile. We need to get better in general. So it's much like the New York Times Idea Lab. And their branded content studio happens to be called T-Brand Studios. So we have our own Story Lab that powers our branded content studio that we call Brand Forge. Washington Post has their own lab and a branded content studio that they offer their clients. So that's how we've structured it. So it's analogous. Is that helpful? Great.
I have one question just before your next presenter. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Terry Carroll representing The Gleaner from Jamaica. Fantastic presentation, Laura. Not just because you presented in English, it was really a great presentation. My question is for you is, in your experience, speaking of native advertising, where do you find the largest pickup in comparing articles, branded articles, and branded video? Native advertising in articles versus native advertising in video. Where do you find your clients really, becoming engaged? Video or articles?
When you're building a native advertising campaign, include them all. Mm-hmm. And infographics, and illustrated video, and another kind of video, and memes, and do articles that contain them all. Because what you want to do is to be able to target audiences wherever they are, right? And some people will consume content really well on video. And so a video would be fantastic for Facebook, because Facebook's algorithm prefers video, right? So if you're going to, do a full native advertising campaign, maybe you do a video for your client that goes on Facebook. But maybe on your publishing page, right, your whatever.com, you do an article. But then if you also have a fabulous Instagram account, then you do an infographic for that client that will go on Instagram. So knowing your platforms, right, and what kind of content performs well on each platform will allow you to create a solid native advertising campaign for your client, and also knowing what kind of audience you have on each one of those platforms. Because if you do not have a strong audience and you have 2 followers on Instagram, I will not offer, right, your client an Instagram add-on to the native advertising campaign.
Fantastic.
So they're different. Don't compare them.
Thank you.
I have a question for the audience. How many of you are doing native advertising? So it looks like we don't have a big group yet. What is your recommendation when you're saying the different qualities that a native campaign has. You mentioned editorial, storytelling. At the end of the day, these are most probably the best storytellers with the highest editorial integrity of the region. How do you recommend if they want to start and they want to get into this? They have relationships with advertisers, they know how to tell a story, they have the audiences. How do they embark in this without jeopardizing their editorial line or feeling that they may be advertorial or selling themselves short?
Good question. Matt, I think you'll have a better answer than I would.
Yeah, the five pillars that we've landed on matter a lot, and we work really hard within our organization to develop some ground rules. And we worked with our editorial team and our sales team to create what we call a, what do we call it? I just lost it. I'm thinking in English and Spanish. Our style guide, yeah, our style guide, which is basically our product description. And we go to the market with their very specific product description. And when the editorial and the sales team agree on the nature of that product, that means that we can't be moved very easily by an advertiser, which is always the concern of the editorial side. The other aspect of that is that it makes it very clear for an advertiser what our product is. Why does that matter? Because this is a new product. It's hard to educate the market. Part of the reason why many of you probably aren't engaged in native advertising yet is it's early in your market, and it's hard to educate them. So we work very hard to use that style guide as the standard to define the product that allows editorial and sales to be very happy about the product that goes on your website, and it's something that the whole company can be proud of.
So is your recommendation to these media companies for their sales force and their commercial team that has relationships with advertisers to go and identify these opportunities and then work with their internal editorial teams to build the storytelling?
Never, 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 never.
Ever.
Never have your editorial team produce the content that creates conflicts of interest. It erodes the trust in the market, and it takes your journalists away from what they do best. Instead, you should create a separate team that does some of this work. You can work with freelancers. Brand Forge does this for dozens and dozens of publishers around the world. But never have your journalists do this unless they're going to do it full time and leave journalism. We found that journalists don't actually typically do a good job with native advertising because it takes a little bit different mentality, a little bit more of a PR or marketing mentality. And so best to have your valuable, precious journalistic integrity and asset focused on doing that great work that maintains the trust on your website that you want to sell native advertising into. So don't cross that line.
Yeah.
If you could go to the microphone, because if not, they can't translate it. Sorry.
Journalists that are trying to branch out on their own and not work for a huge media company and want to have their own blog and have native advertising on their blog, so they don't have like a huge team. Maybe it's just the one journalist or maybe 2 or 3. How would you suggest that they go about it then?
Go about doing native advertising on their blog?
Correct.
I would say, honestly, first and foremost, create an audience. Right before you begin to monetize absolutely anything, you have to get the audience engaged. And in order for you to do that, then you have to begin by creating fabulous content. So it's a couple of different steps. Think about Facebook, right? They didn't start monetizing until way later, until everybody and their dog was on their platform. That's when they started to monetize.
But what if you already have the audience? Then what would be like the next step?
So there's a really good answer to this. So I consider transparency to be a much, much higher standard than objectivity. So as long as you are stating factually that, hey, this is paid content, hey, this is a product I actually enjoy and I trust, so I'm writing about it, and you can trust that. This is a real recommendation. This is paid, but it's also something that you should know that I'm getting paid for. This is a product I enjoy or a service that I tried, and you should feel perfectly comfortable writing an article about that. And you don't need to have that strict separation, especially if you're a single blogger or writer. The truth is many, many blogs out there, things from Gawker, which is having a lot of trouble right now, but not for this reason. There are many, many paid advertorials that appear on very successful blogs everywhere. And you just need to disclose that, you need to be transparent about it, and then you need to know that your audience is smart enough to know the difference between something that you were paid to write and something you chose to write on your own. But it's much, much better if those two things are aligned.
Thank you.
So if we have any more questions, let's keep them till the end, because we have Jeremy here who's going to focus speaking about ad blocking. It's a big challenge. Finally, we have our revenue model, we have our display going, we have some video on, and people aren't seeing the way that it's being monetized. More importantly, it damages a lot of the metrics on what people are seeing, how many unique users you have. So it's a big challenge in the industry. Just to mention a little bit about Jeremy of Own Local. It's an automated digital ad agency. It has many media companies in the US. He works with digital agencies, and what he does is he really provides an automated solution for advertisers to reach multi-platforms. It's a very interesting platform that I think he's going to share more about, and particularly how this is a solution to assist in the ad blocking challenge.
So actually, I won't talk about all that stuff. So my name is Jeremy Mims. I'm the co-founder of a company called Own Local. We are an automated digital marketing company, and we work with a lot of different media companies, but our real specialty is to take content trapped inside of legacy advertisements. So that could be in print, that could be in television, that can be in radio. We extract the content out of it, and then we build digital marketing on behalf of those advertisers. So we worked with more than 150,000 different ad campaigns last month, and actually more than 80,000 businesses. So we're located in Austin, Texas, which means I should speak Spanish, but I unfortunately don't. So I really want to apologize for that. I also want to apologize because I never learned how to use PowerPoint, so this is going to go really fast. So we're a lot of fun. We have a great time in our office, but our entire reason for being is to figure out how to pay for journalism. And the more journalism we can pay for, the better our world is. And from pretty humble beginnings, we've actually grown quite a bit. Today we actually work with more than 2,500 different local media companies in the United States and around the world. And we work with some big brands like this, groups that you might recognize and companies that you might recognize. I have Tribune Publishing up here. I still haven't gotten used to that whole trunk thing, but maybe we will figure that out together. But our maps look like this, and we are all over the place. And I'm not going to talk about me anymore. So I wanted to talk today about ad blocking, because this is a little bit of an epidemic, and this is something that I think that big brands are starting to deal with, but smaller brands and international brands in sort of emerging economies haven't really had to deal with yet. So very simply, ad blocking sucks. There's no way around it. It's really not good. It's just another thing that we can add to the indignities we've faced in the last 15 years. As the internet has grown and become more powerful, we have to deal with all of these kind of pissant little companies showing up and making it much harder for us to make money. And the fact is, we make money for a reason. We make money so we can do our jobs, so we can be a resource for our community, so we can take care of the places that we live. And we're already making less money online than we do in print, and we're making less money in mobile than we do on the desktop. And now some punks want to make it even harder. And so how can any of us feel lucky anymore? right? We have this gift. We have brands that are hundreds of years old, and we are getting run around the world. So let's take a step back here. So I'm a historian by nature and by trade, I suppose. And I love Alexander Hamilton, and I liked him actually even before the musical. But he started a newspaper. He started the New York Post, which is today owned by Rupert Murdoch and is probably a little bit less Hamiltonian than he would have expected. But he said, "It is the advertiser who provides the paper for the subscriber. It is not to be disputed that the publisher of a newspaper in this country, without a very exhaustive advertising support, would receive less reward for his labor than the humblest mechanic." So he got it. We are advertising supported. Advertisers pay for the newspaper. What people don't realize is that a subscription to the New York Times without ads would be over $1,000 a year. Now it's about $300. So it's extremely, extremely important that advertisers are part of this equation. But online, we lost our way. And part of that is because digital was always considered to be a secondary business. It was always supposed to stand alone, or things were given away. The fact is we had to deal with not very good software for a long time. And if we're brutally honest, in the words of the best playwright, and actually it's not Lin-Manuel Miranda, it's William Shakespeare, "The fault, dear Brutus, is in our stars, not in our stars, but in ourselves." Because we needed money. We were greedy. And actually, we were hurting. We allowed all kinds of terrible ads to appear on our sites. So we had pop-unders, we had pop-ups, we had push-downs, we had autoplays, we had pre-rolls, post-rolls, interstitials. We've got crap like taboola on all of our pages. And what we end up with is stuff that's like, we got one quick trick and a bunch of other really horrible things that made our sites miserable and slow to load and unfortunate. You know, I had an ad 2 days ago. It was a transparent overlay on a mobile phone with a tiny little X, and it looked 17 different times as I scrolled down the page. I don't know if I ever want to go back to the Daily Beast ever again. And I care deeply, deeply about the future of journalism. And this is what I've spent the last 6 years of my life investing my time and my money in. And even I thought about installing an ad blocker that day. We forget that we're not monopolies anymore. People have a choice these days. And even the IAB, which is an international standards body, says we messed up. They said, increasing profit margins led to ad blocking software, poor user experience. That's crazy, right? Our entire reason for being is to serve our users. If we serve our users, there is always a place for advertising. But we got greedy. And actually, we got too clever. You know, the IAB still has a section of their website called Rising Stars that includes some of these most abusive ad types. So here we are. Ad blockers exist. They're not going away. We can't expect them to go away. And the biggest software companies in the world actually want them. And actually hardware companies too. Users prefer them, and anything the users want, it's very easy to stand behind. Ad blockers like Shine are actually working directly with mobile phone carriers to install ad blocking right from the start. This probably won't happen on Apple phones, but on Android phones this is almost a certainty. And the reason is because ad blockers reduce data consumption, they reduce the costs, they make things faster, and mobile phone companies do not make their money by serving up ads. They make their money by selling subscriptions. And I actually encourage you to install one of your own on your phone or on your desktop, and you will see an improved experience. You'll see a clarity that comes through. And the experience is much, much better. So we need to be better to counter this. And then even worse, we have companies like Apple. So the reason why Apple allowed ad blockers on their phones, ostensibly because it's going to help users, but really it's to deprive Google of revenue, right? Apple is looking for ways to fight Google. Google makes almost all of its money on ads. They did $66 billion last year, all in advertising. So if Apple has a way to cut into their profits and their money, they're going to do it. So Google, Google doesn't mind, actually, and the reason they don't mind is because they control Chrome, which is the #1 web browser on the desktop, and also the #1 web browser in mobile. Not to mention the fact that they're the default search in all Apple phones. So they have a great platform, and the truth is they're tracking you anyway. They're tracking you through all kinds of different mechanisms. What you're doing through their browser comes back to them. Even if it's anonymized, they know who you are. Facebook. Facebook doesn't mind ad blockers because people can't block ads inside of mobile apps right now. And mobile apps are how Facebook does business today. They control Facebook Messenger and they control Facebook, not to mention Instagram, WhatsApp, and everything else. So as long as Facebook has control of these things, they're not overly concerned about ad blockers. And in fact, they're kind of cool with it if it hurts Google too. No, the truth is, you're the ones who get hurt. And to these big companies, they really don't care. They believe that you'll move to Apple News or Google AMP or Facebook Instant Articles if it turns out you can't really make money on the web anymore. They want your content, they want your money, and an article today says Facebook is making its news feed a little bit more about your friends and a little less about publishers. Gosh, what another undignified thing to happen to us. Is they announce Instant Articles, they let it open up on April 12th, and then boom, they shut the door again. So who actually uses these ad blockers? So there's all kinds of studies out there. It's $20 billion, $18 billion, $27 billion. The truth is these numbers are inflated and maybe they don't even really matter. But at least 198 million people around the world right now are using ad blockers. In the United States, it grew about 41% last year. We have almost a sixth of the country using ad blockers. It's highly likely that that's going to happen in other countries as well. So what's kind of interesting, and this is information provided by a group called Civic Science. I highly recommend you check them out if you want to do polling of your readers, of your users. So desktop ad blockers tend to be male, tech savvy, and be younger, but not actually like teenage young. They tend to be, 25 to 54 years of age. So I fall into that group. I probably should be using an ad blocker, I guess. Mobile ad blockers tend to have, and this is actually a difference, so desktop, that's the case. Mobile ad blockers tend to have a higher income and higher levels of education. And I think this is extremely relevant for this audience. African Americans and Hispanics in the United States are more likely than whites to use an ad blocker, which is a little bit terrifying, right? And that's actually a little bit interesting because in the United States, mobile phone adoption has been how the Hispanic audience has very rapidly gotten online. So here's the thing. People who block ads tended to be people who didn't really click on them anyway. But they also tended to be the higher demographics you use to sell your advertising. So they're the people that you say, hey, we've got this great audience of people. They're not going to click on the ads because they're just not that kind of person. But these are the people you're going to be brand advertising to. And the truth is your effective click rates will go up, but your audience for ads will go down. And many people who support ad blocking basically believe that this is victimless behavior. There's really 2 or 3 different types of people that do this. There are people that are kind of free software types of people, and there are people that kind of fall into the category of, all content should be free. So how do we deal with this? Let's take a look at a few quick examples. So Forbes, they forced readers to turn off blockers in order to read content. 44% of people complied in order to read that individual article. Now, if you go to Forbes normally, you know that the quality of articles varies. Some of it's very good and some of it's very poor. And depending on what article people got to, they may have said, this is worth it. In some cases, they didn't. Bild, which is in Germany, this is the largest paper in Germany, they've created several different options. They let people turn off their ad blocker and they can do it, or they can pay money and get 90% fewer ads across the board. And they said that this has helped. Bloomberg, they're actually saying, we need to redesign things that we're really considering our users, our readers. And they're doing a lot of surveys and studies, and they're planning on asking people to whitelist their publications specifically. So there is one other way to deal with this, and this is the worst one. It's called partnering with the ad blockers themselves. So many ad blockers exist to replace or let ads through to fund themselves. So you've got ones like AdBlock Plus and Brave. This is kind of like paying protection money to the mob. But there are more than 700 publishers paying AdBlock Plus right now. So, and there's more than 60 million people across the world that use that program in order to make sure that those ads can be seen. This really is not ideal. So I actually hope, and this is probably a fruitless thought, I hope that the entire industry bands together with one uniform action. It's probably not going to happen because it hasn't happened yet, and there's always going to be some value for opting out of a program. But I actually do wonder what it would be like if media got together to release their own ad blocker and block the ads on Facebook and Google and all the content aggregators out there. Advertise it aggressively on your own sites, but whitelist your own domains. Allow your ads to appear. And ironically, the interesting thing about this is that any of your users that install your ad blocker are essentially opting in to receive your ads. So you should be able to get higher CPMs. It can be very interesting. It might be a pipe dream, but very, very interesting. Now, we are an advertising-based business. There is no getting around that. We have always been and possibly always will be. However, there are other ways. You can aggressively diversify your revenue through digital products and services. You can get into events. You can get into all kinds of other businesses that can support the content that you create. And I'd be happy to talk to you about it afterwards, really. But some of the things that we specialize in. So where is it safe to build an audience? Email. Email is the best one by far. This is my favorite. You heard Matt Cohen talking about this earlier. This is the jam. This is what you need to do. Email was created in 1971. No one owns it. And you probably use email more than any other communication application there is. 80% of the internet uses email on a regular basis. The ones that don't are weirdos and unemployed people, and they don't matter, right? They're not the people that your advertisers are looking for anyway. 71% of Americans use social networking. So more people use email than social networking, and it's still the most dominant social network on earth. The truth is, you have a forward button, you can reply. Your email network is probably your real social network. It's your business colleagues, it's the people that you want to talk to. You forward an article to a few people, you don't share it with 800 people. That's way more valuable. In fact, you can't even sign up for Facebook if you don't have an email address, so it's pretty important. So email isn't cool, people think it's passé, but almost every good business today relies heavily on email, from retail to publishing. And if you want to know more about email, actually I really seriously want to encourage you to go talk to Matt Cohen from 2nd Street. He knows probably more than anybody. Or you can come talk to me, and I know lots about the publishing side of email to make more money. The other thing that you'll love about email is the CPMs are way higher than the web. In the United States, the average CPM is way less than $10 per thousand, so our CPM, cost per thousand, $10. The CPM in email is north of $25. It's a huge, huge difference. And actually, the person that asked about doing a blog before, do that as an email. You'll make way more money. Texting works. That's, I have the same mobile number I've had for the last 17 years. I will probably have this mobile number 20 years from now. So make sure that you are engaging and gathering this information. At least in America, people don't change their phone numbers that often. And the average person looks at their phone 46 times a day. So I've got their email address, email is on your phone, I've got your phone number, I can text you something. Nothing will get in the way of your communication. Except that texting is a little bit limited. You still can't really italicize in it. But emojis are cool. And people have to pay some extra fees sometimes, and you really don't want to be the one sending 1,000 texts, unless you're my ex, in which case, just keep going. So physical addresses. This is another way to manage things, and this is a persistent relationship. It really is. Where you live, you probably are going to continue living. And it means that you can send a package, and you can even ask them to leave it under the doormat. But companies that we consider to be technology startups fundamentally are place-based companies. Amazon, they send you stuff to your house or to your work. Birchbox, they send you boxes to your home or to your work. Newspapers, they deliver it to your doorstep. Instacart delivers groceries to your home. Seamless delivers food to your home or your work. And Uber picks you up wherever you are and takes you wherever you need to be. It doesn't matter how drunk you are. So all of these companies are, like to talk about them as if they're software, but the truth is the key to their success is knowing your location. And so we have email, we have texting, and we have location. The other one that's possibly interesting is something like Slack or Facebook Messenger. And Facebook Messenger will be more interesting sooner than Slack will. But I think the jury is still out. I don't trust Facebook further than I can hammer throw Mark Zuckerberg. And the reality is that the rules can change. But if chat becomes more like email or texting, something that's personal, something that Facebook can't curate, then this is going to be really interesting. If it becomes more like a social network, then the rules are going to change all the time. So if it looks like email, I'd go for it. If it doesn't, I'd stay the hell away. So to sum up, if you want people to turn off ad blockers, you must make a great product. You must make a non-abusive product. You must make sure that ads are in a respectful place, that they are respectfully sized, that they don't interrupt people's behavior, that they don't trick them to click on them. It's so annoying. You must begin building your audience where you can control the relationship. You must do this. There are all kinds of opportunities to attract readers and to use platforms like AMP or to use instant articles or even Google, Apple News or anything else like that to bring people in, but you must convert them into an email, into a phone number, or into some sort of a permission-based communication so that you can have that relationship with them. If you rely on other people to deliver your audience, it's always going to be at your peril. And then we all need to work together to take targeted action against ad blockers. The truth is everybody's going to try something different. Some big companies are going to try to lead the way. But the biggest companies, the New York Times, Bild, Bloomberg, they have the luxury of doing this because they produce the highest quality content. If you are not the #1 publisher in your market, you need to seriously explore banding together with other people to do this. And lastly, we are down, but we are not out. The truth is, we can all work together and we can kick some Cobra Kais in the face. I want to thank you all so much. And if you want to talk to me, or if you want to talk to Maria, she speaks Spanish, which is way better than me. And I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Any questions? I have one quick question, which is, talking to media companies that are here today, and that have the audiences, that at the end of the day, you're saying advertisers are the ones that are paying. Advertisers are demanding these rich media, high impact ads, or they're going to go over to the Googles and where else they could get some performance-based ads. Your recommendation of emails and texts, how does that relate to these media companies? What they're trying to do, see how they could become profitable across their digital platforms?
So I believe very fundamentally that advertisers go where the audience is. One of the scariest statistics I saw recently was that something like 45% of people who were surveyed about where they got their news from, they said Facebook. That's totally incorrect. They didn't get their news from Facebook. They got it from an article that was passed around on Facebook. But Facebook is getting the attribution. So in a world where I am an advertiser and where I'm buying through an agency, I'm much more likely to say Facebook. That's where I'm going to put my ad dollars. rather than to say I'm going to split it up amongst publishers. My biggest concern isn't that we'll say no to an advertiser. I think that's a good idea, actually, a lot. I think it's very, very valuable to say, no, I'm not going to sacrifice my user experience in order to run your crappy rich media ad. You've got to conform to our specifications. You need to respect our readers because that's our #1 job. That's the thing that Facebook says every time. That's the thing that Google says every time. Whenever they want to introduce something new or control a standard. Google didn't say, let's take those 2 text ads we have running at the top of every page and replace it with push down ads and things like that. They said, no, we need to respect our audience, we need to respect our users. The other thing is, I think that what advertisers really want is less. That's weird, but what they really want is for you to have less advertising on a page. They want to be the focus. When you run 6 ads on a page, they're not the focus. They're not going to pay a premium price for that. You might make a little bit more money, but it's abusive to your readers, and it's not particularly effective for advertisers. Far better for you to pick 1 thing or 2 things, charge a premium price for it, and put it in a place where it's going to matter for that advertiser. And they will pay for that all day long. If you demonstrate that you have an audience of committed subscribers or readers, especially if you have them opting into something, or you have their email, or you have their phone number and you can track them over time, that is how you maintain a relationship with advertisers. Going externally entirely for your audience, or at least in a big way for your audience, I think that is fraught with peril, because that's the thing that means that one day those ad blockers and things like that are going to mean that you're not going to make enough money. And if you get disintermediated from your audience, from your subscribers, from the people that should care about your brand, then it gets very, very hard. In the US, we have people that, or newspapers that we work with, where 70% of their traffic comes from Facebook. They make less money today than they've ever made before. The ones that have maintained a close relationship with their readers are the ones that keep their advertisers. So I hope that answers the question.
Go ahead.
Hola. I saw the options that you were giving against the ad blockers, and I like the analogy that you said with partnering with them would be like paying to the mob for protection. Have you considered options like anti-ad blocker technologies? I didn't see that as an option.
I mentioned it as part of the Forbes example. Anti-ad blockers, I think, are a good idea. I think it's important that if you use those, that you are in a position to try to convert them into a relationship. So if you can get their email address, I think that's extremely valuable. I think that's in some ways better than a credit card right now. In the United States, people have tried very hard with paywalls to say, you know what, this is, you hit your 10 article limit, pull out your credit card. I like a system that works much better in the form of, if you want to read this article, put in your email address, and then after 10 more articles, if you want to get some messaged alerts because you clearly read this enough, why don't you give us your phone number? And then over time, step them into something that says, hey, you're one of our most valuable readers, but you're not paying to support this content that you're spending a lot of time with. Maybe you want to pull out your credit card and give us $10 a month, something like that. And I think we've been too focused on the money and not focused enough on the relationship. The relationship builds the opportunity for money. What Bild does in Germany, they use the anti-ad blocking technology as well. And they give people the option to put in, or either disable the ad blocker and look at the content, or to have their ads reduced by 90%. Which is kind of interesting because it still gives you the opportunity to offer premium inventory to people for whom money is more available than time, and that's really the best possible audience for an advertiser. I hope that answers your question. I think it's very important, but I think that if your content is not extremely high quality, you will face a lot of users who are using ad block right now who just kind of wander away and to some other alternative, and that may be an okay outcome. I would like to see more people using it if that's going to be the strategy that the media industry uses.
So I think we're over time. This panel was, I think, very interesting in finding alternatives. At the end of the day, we do have to continue to make money as media companies. The idea is how can we continue to respect the user experience? How can we complement and also provide advertisers with solutions? Native advertising is definitely where I think advertisers are asking to go, and it could very much live within our media and within our sites. And also asking for more information. I think it was very interesting. If you want to receive access to the content, provide us your email. Provide us a phone number that we could text you at, and that continues to grow the relationship that you have and the dialogue that you have with your users. If there's any other questions, I'm sorry we weren't able to talk much about programmatic, but we're all available after the session. Thank you very much.
Turn it off.